Hi, readers. I'm Nikki the librarian, and welcome to the Constant Reader channel. Here we discuss books, reading, writing, and our love of the embrace of book JOMO, the joy of missing out. I invite you to show up for the book recommendations and stay for the conversations. Let's begin today's episode. Dark academia. Everybody's talking about it, but they're not talking about these 5 books. And I don't know why, because these books are really good. And I need to put them on your radar. I feel a professional urge to do so. The first book I'm going to tell you about is called Name of the Star by Maureen Johnson, and it's the first in the Shades of London trilogy. But it's about Rory, and it's YA fiction. Rory is attending a 2-year boarding school in London. She's originally from Louisiana. And she has the opportunity to live in London these 2 years because her parents are diplomats. And diplomats will be a theme we'll be coming back to in another book I'll be recommending. But anyway, her parents are not on the scene. And so Rory goes to her boarding school. And on her first day there, as she's going from the airport to the school, which used to be a workhouse, there's been a terrible, terrible crime committed in London in the fashion of Jack the Ripper. There will be more terrible murders committed on the same day in the same areas as Jack the Ripper. There's a copycat, and Rory will be mixed up in all of it. This book is quick because it's fast-paced, it's plot-driven. It's funny in times. There's a little bit of a romance because it's YA. It's just a fun read, and it's great. It's dark and creepy and weird. And I remember when I first read it, the dates of the murders of Jack the Ripper were coinciding with the dates that I was actually reading it, which was like late August and all of September. And that was really creepy. And it added to the atmosphere of just overall, ugh. The next book I'm going to talk about is Stranger Diaries by Elly Griffiths. And I think this also is the first book in a series. The main character in this series is a police detective, and her name is Harbinger. And but what's interesting about Elly Griffiths' books is they are always switching point of view, and it's always first person. So that's kind of a different way of doing mysteries than what I'm used to. So I like that. But this book in particular is about a teacher named Claire. And Claire is mildly obsessed with an author who lived in the early part of the century. And he wrote a short story that people have been obsessed with because they talk about, well, what about this? And what does it mean? And I don't understand. So not only does she know everything about this book, she's also this short story. She's also writing a biography on this author. And creme de la creme, she happens to be able to teach at the school where his house is. It's part of the school. So you're going to get that dark academia vibe of staircases and paneled libraries and dusty corridors. The story opens with one of her teacher colleagues, getting horribly murdered. And Harbinger, I cannot say her name right. Harbinger is the detective on the scene, and they both spend a lot of time in this book figuring out who the killer is because they kind of have to work together. This book is great because it's kind of like a book within a book, and you have to read and know and pay attention to the short story when they give you clues to kind of help you out to solve the murder that happens in real life. I like this book, and I really liked the detective that I've read all the other books in the series that have come out so far. I highly recommend Stranger Diaries and the rest of the books in the series by Elly Griffiths. My next book is The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova. This book is long, but it's great. It reads fast. you're going to stay up late reading it just because you need to know. You need to know how it ends, what's going to happen. And it's about a book that's been found by 3 different people. So it's 3 different narrators. There is the college mentor, there is the mentee, and then there's the mentee's daughter. And they are taking place in the 1930s, the 1950s, and the 1970s. So you've got these 3 different timelines, and they all concern these books that have shown up unexpectedly. And these are weird books. These are books that when you open it, there's nothing in the book except one thing. And it is like a stamp, a wood print, a woodcut. It's a stamp. It's a stamp that has a picture of a dragon. And the banner that the dragon is holding in its talons says Dracula. The daughter in the 70s just happened to stumble upon it in her dad's office. However, the father and his old college mentor were given the book. They have no idea how. They tried to get rid of it. It would always keep coming back to them. And it is completely linked to Dracula, the real Vlad the Impaler, not the Hollywood version. This book is dark and broody. It takes place in dusty archives and museums and Ivy League libraries. It's an adventure, but it is not a woo adventure. It is an adventure. And I highly recommend it. You will not be disappointed. My next book is a book that I was forced to read when I was in high school. And everybody in Mrs. Eddy's class was forced to read their junior year. And that is A Separate Peace by John Knowles. Only now as an adult can I look back and go, yeah, that was a really good book. But at the time, we all hated it, much like any forced book is. But this is dark academia. It is about 2 boys, Phineas or Finn and Jean. They are staying at their boarding school for a summer session. And it is one of those dark academia type of things where there's the really cool guy and then there's the really not cool guy that wants to emulate him. Phineas is the cool one. He's got that personality that draws everyone to him. He's a natural leader. People do what he says, even if it's a terrible idea. And Jean, see, this is one of those things that the reader needs to take, I gotta look at that. The names that authors give their characters. One is Phineas, Finn, Finny. That's a cool name. The other one is Jean. Jean's your guy. If you need a steady person, that's Jean. Jean's not going to do anything wild and crazy. Finn will. Finny's great. Jean, he's Jean. So the author picked those names on purpose. Anyway, Jean he's envious of Finn. He's Finn's friend. He does what Finn asks him to do, even though he doesn't want to, and he resents Finn for that. There's this big tree, and Finn convinces him and eventually all of their friend group to jump out of the tree and do it, and don't worry about it, and you're just being a big baby. So Jean does it, hates every minute of it. Every time he has to jump out of this tree into the stream below, he hates it, and he resents Phineas for it. Well, there's an accident that happens on this tree because of this tree, and it starts to taint a relationship that was already dysfunctional to begin with. And that's when you get those creepy, broody boarding school vibes. It just ruins the friendship and things fall apart, all because of this accident. The last book I'm going to tell you about is A Picnic at Hanging Rock by Joan Lindsey. It was written in the 60s and takes place in Australia. Huge disclaimer before we begin this book. do not read or look into the unpublished final chapter of this book. It will ruin the book for you. And when I say ruin, you will ruin the book for you. Because the editor said, cut the final chapter, you don't need it. And they were right. It's a great book as it's published. It's absolutely perfect. But if you find out what that final cut chapter is about, it kind of ruins it for you. But you do it to yourself, because that's what I did. I love this book. I gave it 5 out of 5. It's one of the best books I read in 23. But I read that synopsis about that cut chapter, and I wish I hadn't. I wish I had waited till I'd finished reading the entire book, because it changed everything. So don't do it. Read the book, then find out what the final chapter is about. That being said, this book is great. It is about these girls that go to this boarding school in Australia. And on Valentine's Day, they decide, because the headmaster lets them, the headmistress, to go on a picnic to Hanging Rock, which is this huge volcanic outcropping that's about 2-3 hours away by buggy. This takes place in the 1900s, early 1900s. Almost all of them get to go. There's like 20 kids in the entire boarding school. 19 of them get to go. One didn't, because she didn't memorize a poem, which is important. So the 19 girls get to go to Hanging Rock and have a picnic. There's also 2 teachers that will go with them, a mathematics teacher and a French teacher, to supervise. They get to the rock. They're having a great time. It's this beautiful picnic. It's summer, because it's the southern hemisphere, and it's all just very chill. And they get towards the end of the afternoon, and they say, okay, in 1 more hour, we're going to pack up and head home, because, it's a long drive home. And 4 girls ask the French teacher, hey, can we go walk along the creek here? And she says, yeah, but make sure you're back within an hour, because we're heading out. They go for a walk on Hanging Rock, and only one and then another one come back. Nobody knows what happened to these 2 other students. And in fact, the math teacher also has gone missing. Nobody knows what happened to any of them. The girls that are recovered, they have no idea they don't remember anything. They remember going off and crossing the creek, and after that, nothing. Gone. Not a clue. That sets in motion everything that happens to the boarding school, to the people who were at the picnic, to the people that were in the other, there was another party that was happening. There was another group of people that were having a picnic. They're affected by it. The headmistress is affected by it. And this shadow of this huge mystery, because these girls are gone. The police have checked. They've checked. It's been weeks. Nothing has turned up. Nothing. No dingoes ate their babies. Nothing. Nothing is there. It's just like they vanished. And that incident and all of these unanswered questions start tearing everything apart. And it is a slow burn. And you know that it's going to incinerate everything. The writing is tight. There's lots of, what does this mean? How do we put that? Does it go here? This book was great. I love this. This is one of the best books I read in 2023. And I wish I would have read it a lot sooner. And I really, really wish I hadn't read anything about that cut chapter. But I highly recommend it. And there it is. Those are my 5 dark academia books that you probably didn't know anything about. If there is a book that you're like, oh, Nikki, dark academia, read that one, because nobody else has talked about that one either. Let me know down below. If today's book spoke to you, make sure you get a copy at your local independent bookstore or your public library. Yay! If you haven't done so already, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. I'll be back again in a week or two with another episode. Happy reading, everyone. See you next time.